General Ban Ki-moon has given his strongest signal yet that he may well seek to become South Korea's next president. Oliver Cornock is managing editor at Oxford Business Group. Good morning, Ollie. Thank you very much for coming in.
Good morning.
So it's the third day that we've led on the Berlin truck attack, and possibly this is one of the most significant lines to come out of after Monday's attack, that this guy had been under surveillance, but then there was lack of evidence, so they stopped following him.
Yes, this is this all too familiar discussion after these terrible events of whether more could have been done to tackle this guy. Was he a lone wolf, or was there a group behind him? These are all questions that the security services will be asking themselves. And, of course, it does just raise loads and loads of questions, and the public want answers, and I just don't think often they're very available. I think it also, Adnan, calls into question this story of information sharing between organisations. If this guy had a history in Italy, in Tunisia, Europol, for example, I know Tunisia isn't in Europe, but it does raise all these questions, and perhaps going forward there needs to be greater integration between organisations. But as you say, this is a story that keeps on rolling.
Mm. OK, well, we're going to follow it because obviously there's now a reward, €100,000 reward for information leading to his arrest. And then there's a concern in Germany that he may be part of a bigger cell and has a support network. And as you say, more than a lone wolf.
And of course, this is big news for Angela Merkel. You know, opening the doors has raised so many questions. And going into an election, that is going to weigh heavily on her prospects.
Now, let's talk about Saudi Arabia next.
Yes, sorry, I thought it was Italy,
but it is budget day today. Lots of analysis in Arab news, for good reason, as to what they are going to announce, the impact it will have. Give us your take on all of this.
Well, I think in your lead you spoke about short-term pain, long-term gain. That has to be the message that's got through. And Riyadh can take some heart in the fact that the reports are that the budget deficit has been reduced, about $100 billion last year. They're looking at about just under 80 this year, if the reports are true. And this is all hearsay at the moment. But it does suggest that Riyadh can say, actually, we're getting things under control, yet we do need to keep pursuing this reform process. And that's been a very painful year. 2016 has been a very painful year for Saudi Arabia. We've seen contractors not paid. We've seen public sector wages cut, bonuses cut, the standard of living reduced, people's spending power, and above all, sentiment reduced. Now, this is a very thin tightrope that Saudi Arabia is treading at the moment. However, it really has little choice. However, having got things under control, it would seem, with the budget deficit being reduced, oil prices, this historic agreement a couple of weeks ago, is really important.
But the difficult year they've had, 2016, perhaps forced their hand when it came to that historic agreement on oil prices, because actually it was Saudi Arabia not playing ball and trying to price out the fracking industry in the US.
Absolutely, and think the subsidy question is an enormous one. There is a very special social contract within Saudi Arabia and the rest of the Gulf, whereby the state is able to use its largesse to fund the public. That is changing, and that is a fundamental shift, and that the size and enormity of that cannot be underestimated.
You answer my questions before I've even asked them. I was going to say, is there a sense that a Saudi budget is an even more important event than, say, the UK budget? Because is it true that the Saudi government's involvement in keeping people employed and keeping people in their lifestyle and just being able to help them exist is more important than it may be in the UK, where a lot of people may be just employed in the private sector?
I think that has been 100% true, and is now just it is reducing in how true that is. The big goal of Vision 2030, this massive economic reform plan, again, the enormity cannot be underestimated of that, is to reduce the involvement of the public sector in funding business infrastructure and increase the private sector. Autonomous private sector growth has to be the big goal.
One of the goals was to sort of eliminate its reliance on oil as income, as the main source of income by 2020. Is that correct? And is that possible?
Well, it's certainly not going to be eliminated. I think this idea of diversification is not a severance from oil. Oil is still going to be a very important part of the Saudi budget going forward.
Right, so yesterday morning, you were reporting that Monte de Paschi was looking for private funding, is that right?
Yes.
And now it's changed?
No, yesterday was the deadline for private investors, retail investors, to come forward with what they hope would be a substantial sum in terms of buying up shares in Italy's oldest bank, the world's oldest bank, They did not raise the funds they required yesterday, so therefore we need help from elsewhere, and it looks like it's going to be a government bail-in, as many projected it would be.
So this JP Morgan-led sort of consortium fell apart. We're talking about a bank that's share price is 86% down. Capitalisation questions now in an already wobbly Eurozone, with more money going in the north and seemingly more money being spent. This does raise some very significant questions longer term. I wonder whether we're just kicking this can down the road a little bit further. However, it's a very important bank in Italy, and sentiment again is going to be really battered already. It's part of the reason for the political change in Italy. I think this does raise some serious questions, though, once again, about the capitalisation of European banks.
Yeah, the way they rescue this bank is very important because, of course, those who hold bonds in this bank, who are pensioners in Italy, there are many Italians who just put their money into this bank many years ago with the guarantee they'd get it back with interest. Actually, they could see they have to take some of the write-down on this bank, and that will not go down well with the population of Italy, will it?
Not at all.
Pensioners always seem to suffer. So, in the International New York Times, in 2008, Rex Tillerson, who, if the Senate approves him, will be the next Secretary of State of the US, said Russia, quote, must improve the functioning of its judicial system and its judiciary. There is no respect for the rule of law in Russia today. And now it's all changed. He says he's best buddies with Vladimir Putin.
And at the time, he was also heading up one of the largest oil companies in the world, who did an extremely large deal. A $500 billion joint venture was sealed with Russia. Strange that.
3 years after that quote.
Strange that. He also, as we were talking, Adnan, earlier, was given an award by Russia, which, as this announcement was made, was suddenly removed from his Wikipedia page.
Yes, that was very interesting, and then it was replaced, and it was a reward given by Putin for Rex Tillerson being a friend of the Russian people.
Now, it's very easy to get into all of these conspiracy theories and being negative on this. I think we have to be balanced. Is there some hope here for the corporate sector? I think there is mood music coming out in some of the analysis we read that perhaps Trump's angle on business could be useful to the corporate sector. And my goodness, some of the corporate sector does need some positivity, particularly financially. You know, there's been a huge level of regulation and things like that. And I'm not saying that's wrong, but perhaps some businessmen will be taking heart from perhaps a little bit more corporate-focused leadership.
OK, so it's the last shift that we're doing together before Christmas. So rather than talk about Ban Ki-moon potentially being South Korean president, let's show you some pictures. Ollie, you're going to like this, OK? So this is actually in November in Wisconsin, but the local police department has just released it. This young man has been stopped by a police officer, and he says, Mr. Officer, yeah, sorry, I'm late for a presentation. And so the police officer says, look, let me help you. I can do your necktie for you. That's great. The police officer is being mum. Incredible.
And he didn't fine him. He just gave him a warning, apparently.
It's fantastic.
And he was on his way.
What a lovely story to hear that the police, you know, who get such a bad press, particularly in America,
yes, they do.
Being seen to do this, and all through the power of a dash cam.
Yes, that's right. OK, so it used to be that the British Bobby, the famous Bobby, used to carry, I believe, in their left-hand pocket, a little notebook which included instructions about how to deliver a baby. And then in New York, they used to carry pistols. In Italy, they used to carry submachine guns. And I've always told people about the difference between police around the world and how they are armed and how they deal with the public.
True
That's
public
lovely.
service.
Lovely picture. Ollie, thank you very much indeed. You know what? Thank you for all of your appearances throughout 2016. See you in 2017. Have a good holiday.
Look forward to it. Thank you.
And thanks for watching.
Have a good day. Bye-bye.